Just potting on my sweet rocket. It can actually stay in these cells for a little bit longer, because you can see that we're not anywhere near being root bound. Look, we've got some lovely healthy roots there, but I fancy a little job this afternoon. So these I can pot on, and then they can get on with growing, because these are going to flower for us first in the garden, really. They're one of the very first to get away in the spring, and it also means I can separate any doubles. So I've got one there, so that's still quite easy to separate because they won't have knitted together. I've got about 3 in this one. There we go. So they're not going to grow properly if they haven't got enough space, if they're all arguing amongst each other for water and nutrients. And then what happens is somebody becomes the winner and the others end up falling behind. So I will give them their own cells, but it also means I've got more plants than I thought. So that's good. Look at this naughty little one. I've got weeds and everything. There's a trio of sweet rocket. That little one there has come up quite late, but that's fine. If I give it some space, it will be all right. It's too late to start these now because they take quite a long time to germinate and then grow to this size. You can see the date on the label there. And they need to go through this cold snap that's coming up, and more of them, to flower properly next year. Otherwise they will germinate and they will grow, but they won't flower until the following year, and that'll take up loads of space in your garden. Also, don't worry about these leaves here just starting to die off. If these leaves start to do that, then you've got a problem. But these are the seed leaves. So the plant, all plants basically, they put up these leaves to start with to get them on their feet. And then eventually the true leaves come through and take over the job. And then the plant will just jettison the seed leaves, which is what it's doing there. You can see they're all like that. So as long as the true leaves are fine, there's nothing to worry about. So I'll separate these now and throw away these naughty, naughty weeds. There we go. I've got one of my many times reused cell trays. So I'm just going to nestle them in. Just a little bit of compost at the bottom. Nestle them. Don't worry if yours aren't as big as mine yet. They'll soon grow. There is no hurry. As long as they've germinated and they're getting out of the seedling stage, the very tiny stage, then that's absolutely fine. Gently teasing them apart, keeping as much compost as I possibly can around the roots. These ones prick out quite easily. Not all seeds like to be separated. Some you're better off just snipping out with scissors, like the poppies for example. But you can find more information and a closer, longer look at doing these plants in particular on my website, as always. I thought I'll just do one for you. Save you going to the website if you don't want to. So we'll take out the weeds, get rid of those, get as much compost as I can around this baby one. Lovely. And then this just leaves me these 2 bigger ones, and they're much more robust. So I'm just looking to see where their stems are, and then I'm just going to put my fingers in between and gently tease them apart, keeping as much compost as I possibly can around the roots. There we go. Lovely job. I'll pop them in a 15 cell tray, and I'll have plenty of room. I'll have enough room then to grow until we can plant them out in the garden, and they can actually go outside by January, if not sooner, because they are super hardy, tough plants. These are the magnificent sweet rockets. So these will be one of the first that I harden off on Wednesday, hopefully if the temperatures stay the same. Don't worry if you look at your leaves, if you've got a little bit of a red tinge to them, that's completely normal. And when you put them outside, they'll probably get even more red. It's just the cold. But they actually need that. They need really cold temperatures to flower really well. So don't worry, red tinge on your sweet rocket, that's completely normal. It's just the cold and they need that. So they're absolutely fine. They're so hardy. My goodness me, I just had to show you this. So this is the sweet rocket that I showed you this morning, and since then I've given it a feed, and I just turned round to put it back on the shelf for tonight, and look how green it's gone. So just remember, if you've had your plants in the trays for a long time now,
the nutrients in the compost will have been used up. So you will need to give them a little bit of a feed. I mean, look at the difference. Clearly needed it. So seaweed solution is the best, but tomato food will do just as well if that's all you've got. And then your plants will turn emerald green with the extra nutrients. Just don't do it when it's really, really cold, because the water freezes in the compost anyway. And also it can encourage them into new leaf, which can get nipped by the frost. But at the moment is the perfect time to be feeding your plants.
All of your hardiness ratings for all your plants are listed on a separate page, quick check page for you. And then you've also got all the steps for hardening off right here, all written down for you. But apart from keeping an eye on the watering, I can really just leave them to get on with it. Now you need to be careful that you don't overwater your trays once you pot them on, because they've got more water holding capacity. And what happens, this is your compost, so it's got the soil particles, and in between the soil particles you want a mix of air and water. So this is just a tiny bit dry, just needs a little bit more moisture. But what happens when you overwater your compost? I'll use this cell here, so put the compost in there, and then what happens when you overwater it, can you see it shrinking? You're knocking out all of the air. I'll take this compost out. So now, not only is this freezing cold, but there's no air left in this soil. It's all water. So your balance is gone, and plants need 50-50. They need water and air as well. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to mix this with some dry, and that will be fine. And as I mix it with dry, what I'm doing is I'm putting the air back into the soil particles. And don't forget, it is the water that freezes. So if you've just got a block of iced compost, that's not going to do your plants any good whatsoever. Let them breathe, let them have some air. They need it. If you're worried that you have overwatered your trays, you can do a couple of things. You can just replace the compost, but if your plants are delicate and they're still growing, you won't want to knock them all out. So what you can do is just take them up to the house. You could use a heat mat as well if you have one to dry them out. If not, just take them up to the house for a day or so, and the central heating will soon evaporate the moisture out of your compost. See how dirty my hands are as well now. My hands are usually very clean, so if your hands are like this when you're potting on, your compost is too wet. Either that, or you're being too heavy-handed when potting your plants on. You can see how delicate I'm being with the compost. I'm just letting it settle in all around, giving it a gentle tap, and then the light watering will then settle the compost into any air gaps that we might have. You don't want a root to put its toe out and find that there's just air. It needs to have some compost contact with it, because otherwise the air will just prune that root back. It's the same policy as keeping the seed trays nice and dry. If the roots end up going out the bottom and it's just air, they will prune back and the roots will then stay within the cell. So you want to make sure that the cell is full of compost. You don't want any air pruning in the cell. You just want air pruning if they try to escape from the cell, because you want them to stay here, because that's where the nutrients and the water are. You can either push your cells from underneath by giving them a squeeze, or you can use something like this, a little widger, which you can get in the garden centre. I love these. And then you can just gently lever them out of their cell trays. I tend to do a bit of both, a bit of levering. Oh, nearly missed that. Got a weed? No thank you. And a little baby one. That can just go back into another 40 cell tray. If you've got a little tray full of odds and ends, that's what I tend to do, because you don't really need them. You've got enough plants, but can you throw it away? No. There we go, I've got my 40 cell tray back, ready for my late winter sowing. So I'll just leave this to dry off completely in the greenhouse, and I'll give it a good old brushing down with a dustpan and brush, and then I can reuse it again. And then by the time the plants that I sow here at late winter are ready for this tray, these plants will be in the ground. So we can just keep reusing and reusing and reusing and recycling. So you don't need as many as you think.
The sweet rocket. Oh, look at this. The sweet rocket has started to flower. The first bloom of many. This is my view when I'm just pottering around, checking for weeds and filling in any gaps. It's just lovely. All I need is for the sun to come out. Now sweet rocket will take a little bit of shade, and you can see I've put them on the end here, and the sun comes and goes from this area. So we had lovely sunshine this morning, but it's in full shade now, and you can see they are happy as Larry, not batting an eye at the shade. They will rebloom once you cut them, and you can actually leave them and they will rebloom next year too. However, I find that the best flowers are always in the first flowering season. So I would say year one, but they're biennials, aren't they? We sowed them in the autumn. So I will pull these out and re-sow them because they're just so easy. The sweet rocket has been resting for a few hours now, preferably overnight. But you can see that none of the stems have wilted. They're looking really healthy and beautiful. The scent is incredible. And I think just arranged simply all by themselves in a vase would look absolutely incredible. Next, I've got some sweet rocket, and where we've got some shorter stems where they would have been lost in the arrangement, I've taken them off and I'm going to put them along the lip of the vase here. Also find all the information for sowing and growing sweet rocket in your Autumn Jump Starter handbook.